The Keddie Cabin murders, a family slaughtered in a remote resort, 43 years, no arrests. April 11, 1981. A mother, her teenage son, and his friend are brutally murdered in a cabin at a remote California resort. The weapons? A hammer, a kitchen knife, and a steak knife. The killer tortured them for hours while other family members slept in the next room. 3 years later, a skull is found in the woods 29 miles away, another victim from that night. 43 years later, despite knowing who did it, no one has ever been arrested. This is the Keddie Cabin murders. Act 1. The Resort and the Family. Keddie, California. A tiny former logging town in the Sierra Nevada mountains, about 150 miles northeast of Sacramento. By 1981, it was barely a town at all, just a struggling resort called Keddie Resort, a collection of small rental cabins scattered among the pine trees. Sue Sharp, 36, had recently separated from her husband and moved to Keddie with her 5 children, trying to start over. They lived in Cabin 28, a modest 2-bedroom unit. Money was tight, but Sue was determined to give her kids a fresh start. Her children: Johnny, 15, the oldest son, protective of his siblings. Sheila, 14, the oldest daughter. Tina, 12, the middle daughter. Rick, 10, and Greg, 5, the 2 youngest boys. On the evening of April 11, 1981, the family had a normal night. Sheila was sleeping over at a friend's house nearby. The other kids were home with Sue. Johnny had a friend, Dana Wingate, 17, staying over in the living room. Around 10 p.m., Sue and the younger boys went to bed in one bedroom. Johnny and Dana stayed up in the living room watching TV and talking. Tina was in the other bedroom. Sometime after midnight, someone entered Cabin 28. What happened next was one of the most brutal and horrifying crimes in California history. Act 2. The Murders and Discovery. The next morning, April 12th, around 7:30 a.m., Sheila Sharp returned home from her sleepover. She walked up to Cabin 28, opened the door, and stepped into a nightmare. The living room was a scene of unimaginable violence, blood everywhere. Sue Sharp, Johnny Sharp, and Dana Wingate had been brutally murdered. Sue had been beaten and stabbed. Johnny had been strangled with electrical cord and stabbed repeatedly. Dana had suffered massive head trauma from a hammer. But here's what made investigators sick. The victims had been tortured. This wasn't a quick attack. Whoever did this had spent hours in that cabin, inflicting unimaginable pain. The level of violence suggested personal rage, not a robbery or random killing. In the bedroom just down the hall, Rick and Greg, the 2 youngest boys, had slept through everything. When police arrived, they found the boys unharmed, still sleeping. How is that possible? A violent, hours-long attack happened in the next room, and they heard nothing. Some believe the boys were drugged. Others think they were in such deep sleep they simply didn't wake. Or perhaps, and this is the darkest theory, the killers let them live on purpose. Tina Sharp, the 12-year-old daughter, was missing. Her bedroom showed no signs of struggle, no blood. She had simply vanished. Police initially thought she might have run away or hidden during the attack. Search teams combed the woods around Keddie. They searched abandoned buildings, checked with relatives, put out bulletins. No sign of Tina. 3 years later, in 1984, a bottle hunter found a human skull in Camp 18, a remote area about 29 miles from Keddie. Further searching uncovered more remains. It was Tina Sharp. She'd been killed the same night as the others, dumped in the woods. And for 3 years, she'd been there while her family searched and hoped. Act 3. The Investigation and Suspects. From the beginning, investigators had suspects. In fact, they knew almost immediately who likely committed the murders. But proving it? That's where everything fell apart. Martin Smart and John Beau Bubede, 2 men who lived nearby in Cabin 26, just 50 feet from the Sharp family. Martin Smart was married to Sue Sharp's friend, Marilyn. He had a violent temper and had been heard threatening Sue. Neighbors reported hearing arguments between them. Some said Martin was obsessed with Sue, angry that she'd rejected his advances. John Boubede, known as Bo, was Martin's friend, an ex-con known for violence, staying with the Smarts at the time. Within days of the murders, witnesses came forward. A bartender reported that on the night of the murders, Martin and Bo came in around 10 p.m., stayed until midnight, then left. Later that night, around 2 a.m., they returned, agitated, with scratches and injuries. Bo had a cut on his hand. Martin was jumpy, paranoid. A counselor for Martin's wife, Marilyn, came forward with disturbing information. Marilyn had told her that Martin had confessed to being involved. She said she'd found a bloody jacket. She'd heard him talking about the murders and covering it up. A hammer and knife matching the murder weapons were found near the Smarts' cabin. But Plumas County Sheriff's Department botched the investigation from the start. Evidence wasn't properly collected. The crime scene wasn't secured. Witnesses weren't interviewed for weeks. Critical evidence, like the weapons, wasn't tested properly. Martin Smart and Bo Boubede were questioned, but never arrested. In 1984, shortly after Tina's remains were found, both men left California. In 2000, Martin Smart died. In 2006, John Boubede died. Neither was ever charged. In 2013, a major breakthrough. A hammer was found in a pond near Keddie. It matched the type used in the murders. DNA testing was ordered. But Plumas County Sheriff's Department sat on it for years. The hammer wasn't tested until 2016. Then, in 2016, an anonymous letter was sent to the Plumas County Sheriff's Office. The letter claimed to have information about the murders, stating that Martin Smart and Bo Boubede were definitely the killers, and that a third person, a local law enforcement officer, had helped cover it up. Some investigators now believe there was a cover-up, that local police protected the killers because of personal connections, that evidence was deliberately mishandled or destroyed. In 2018, a new investigator was assigned to the case. He stated publicly that he knows who committed the murders, but doesn't have enough evidence to bring charges because the original investigation was so badly bungled. Conclusion: Sue Sharp was 36 years old. She was trying to protect her children, give them a better life. She died defending them. Johnny Sharp was 15, a teenager who fought back against adult attackers to protect his mother. Dana Wingate was 17, a kid who was just sleeping over at his friend's house. Tina Sharp was 12 years old, abducted, murdered, and left in the woods like garbage. Sheila Sharp, the daughter who found the bodies, has spent 43 years living with that image. The younger boys who survived grew up haunted by what happened in the next room. The family has never gotten justice. We know who did it. Witnesses saw them. Evidence pointed to them. They even confessed to people. But because of incompetence, or worse, corruption, Martin Smart and Bo Boubede lived free for decades. They died without ever facing trial. Sheila Sharp is still fighting for answers. She's pushed for new investigations, demanded accountability, refused to let her family be forgotten. In 2021, she filed a lawsuit against Plumas County, alleging that evidence was deliberately concealed and the investigation was sabotaged. The Keddie Cabin murders are a perfect example of how justice can fail. Not because we don't know who did it, but because the system, through incompetence or corruption, let killers walk free. Sue, Johnny, Dana, and Tina deserved better. If you have any information about the Keddie Cabin murders, please contact the Plumas County Sheriff's Office. Even after 43 years, this case is still active. If this case angered you like it did me, subscribe to Unsolved Vault. Some mysteries remain unsolved not because we don't have answers, but because someone doesn't want them solved. Comment below. Do you think there was a cover-up? Stay curious, stay angry, and demand justice for those who can't. Thanks for watching.